Hi everyone, welcome back. I assume if you're looking at this video, you probably looked at my last video. I'll try to make this one a little bit more concise for you. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it over. I felt like I kind of rambled a lot in the first one. And I got a little bit, like I was kind of everywhere. And it was probably because I was still in the process of writing my paper and doing my presentation for class. Just to let you know, on my paper, I actually did receive an A, or it was probably maybe like an A minus, a low A. I know it was definitely an A though. And I probably received an A minus because I had a couple typos. I didn't pay close attention when I turned it in. So I had a few typos, and I included a couple block quotes that my professor said she wished I would have explained more, like went into more depth about. She wanted me to unpack those quotes, and I guess I kind of just did it too briefly for her. So she probably took off some points for that. But in the end, I still received an A. I'm still very proud of this paper, and she had some really nice comments to leave. No, I didn't turn it in on pink paper. I wish I could have. I'm so tired of plain old white paper with black words. I like pink paper, or regular, any color paper other than white. But I decided to print off all my best papers since I've been in college on actual color paper. But, so let's get into it. This time you guys will get to see my prezi, my presentation. This is the same presentation that I used in class, so it, some of the elements in it, it'll seem kind of weird for me to ask, like I asked for you to raise your hand. Of course, I can't see you raise your hand, but that's not a big deal. I was too lazy to revise it and change it for the purposes of my YouTube channel. I just felt like I could just use this one. This should be good enough. What else did I want to say about it? That's about it. The information included in this prezi, in this presentation, is very simplistic, so it would be in your best interest to listen closely to what I'm saying, because the things that you see on the screen are going to be pretty basic. They're not, it's not too much detail, so listen to what I'm saying. I'm going to try my best to provide the most detail. So yeah, we can just dive right into it. Also, if you see me looking this way, it's because I'm looking at my PowerPoint slides. Well, not my PowerPoint slides, my presentation notes. So I'll be reading these because I'll kind of make it like how I did in class, you know. So I'll try to present how I presented in class. And yeah, so I'll be looking over here, I'll be looking down because I have my copy of the story here with all my lovely notes and things like that everywhere on it. So yeah, I have my story, have my paper. You guys can see me, you can see my presentation, and so let's just dive right back into the story, okay? Let me make this bigger for you. Alright, we're going to start off with the summary. So, in a nutshell, this story is about a married man named Dmitry who indulges in a secret love affair with a married woman named Anna Sergeyevna. I'll probably say Sergeyevna most of the time. I don't care if it's correct or not. So he's having a secret love affair with this married woman named Anna while on vacation in Yalta. After they meet, they spend a lot of time together. However, their affair is interrupted when Anna's husband calls for her to come home. I guess he was sick or something like that. Of course, so they depart ways, and they claim, or they believe, that they're never going to see each other again. But of course they do see each other again. And then the central conflict in the story ultimately becomes them not wanting their relationship to be a secret anymore. Them wanting desperately to be together and be happy and not have to worry about their past relationships or their current relationships with their husband and wife at this time. So the focus of my analysis is narration and characterization. characterization. I'm gonna mess up all night because I'm trying to explain things. But whatever. There are many elements you can analyze in this story. I know setting is particularly interesting. There are numerous, it's like dual settings. It's different settings in the story, and they're very significant for understanding the story as well. However, I personally just wanted to look at the narration and characterization. So if you want, I guess, any more information about setting, you can ask me in the comments, or you can get on Spark Notes, E-Notes, things like that. I just didn't really want to touch setting. Mine is on narration and characterization. I found those to be the most interesting, and they kind of work hand in hand. So I thought they'd be a great point of analysis. Alright, so before I dive into my analysis, I want to do a little survey. So I want you to raise your hand, or you don't really have to raise your hand because I can't see you, but this is what I asked the class. So raise your hand if A, you wanted Dmitri and Anna to live happily ever after, B, felt sorry for Anna and or Dmitri, C, had conflicted feelings about their relationship. And I anticipated that most of the class would raise their hand for one of these reasons. So, and I anticipate that you guys who are watching this felt one of these three ways while you were reading the story. I hope that you felt one of these three ways. So, with that being said, keep that opinion in mind, regardless of how you felt. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to basically explain what I think the author intended when he wrote this story, you know. So, let's just move right along. Alright, the importance of Chekhov's narrator. So, his narrator is a third-person narrator, of course. And he helps us learn about the characters, Dmitri and Anna. For the purposes of this presentation, I will focus more on Anna. I will focus more on Dmitri, not Anna. I could do Anna, but I just felt like Dmitri was more interesting, and I just kind of wanted to focus on him. So, let's take a look at what the narrator tells us about Dmitri. So, the narrator ultimately tells us that Dmitri is disloyal, he's misogynistic, he's a predator. We also learn from the narrator's description that Dmitri is very distant and seems aloof and kind of unaffected by many things, mainly Anna. He's unaffected by her, it seems like. You know, on the surface in the beginning of the story, that's what it seems like. These were the initial things we learned about Dmitri in the beginning of the story. And just in case you don't believe me when I say these things about Dmitri, I pulled out some quotes for you to look at, to think about. So, the first one I have up there is, he had begun being unfaithful to her long ago, had been unfaithful to her often, and probably on that account almost always spoke ill of women, and when they were talked about in his presence, used to call them the lower race. I chose this quote because clearly this exemplifies that he is misogynistic and an adulterer. I don't think it can get any clearer than that, and we learned that kind of on the first page of the story. It's like right here, first page, and it kind of goes on to the beginning of the second page. I kind of have like a little note like misogynistic, lower race, underlined, things like that. So the second quote I have up there is, this must have been the first time in her life that she had been alone in surroundings in which she was followed, looked at, and spoken to merely from a secret motive, which she could hardly fail to guess. So I chose this quote because I think this shows how he's a predator in a sense. You know, Anna was much younger than him. He was about in his 40s, I believe, and Anna was like in her early 20s. So the fact that he saw her, like there's a description of him watching her and how he was able to pick her apart and like, oh, she's a married woman. I could tell by her walk that she was married, and that he said some other things about her. So he had been watching her, of course, and he knew all these things. So that kind of seemed like a predator to me, and that's why I felt like that's what I felt the narrator was trying to get us to see too, that he was a predator. And the last quote I have on there is, "There was a watermelon on the table. Guro cut himself a slice and began eating it without haste." Now, out of context, that doesn't really make much sense. But if we go to that page, on page 172, when he said this, this was after they had their first, this was after they had their first, I guess, implied sexual encounter. It doesn't explicitly say that they had just had sex, but I think it can be implied from various details in the text that they had just had sex. And so she's sitting there, where am I? Yeah, she says to him, "It's wrong. You will be the first to despise me now." And this is her getting ready, like she hasn't began to vent yet, but this is her feeling, terrible about what they just did. She feels like a bad person. She feels like Dmitry is going to look at her as a bad person, and it's really getting to her at this moment. And all Dmitry can do at this moment is cut himself some watermelon, and ate it very slowly because he didn't care. He wasn't trying to engage in any type of conversation at this point. So yeah, those are the 3 quotes that I picked to justify the characteristics that I pulled out about Dmitry. This is what the narrator wanted us to know about Dmitry. So let's keep going. Alright, so how is it possible to feel any type of sympathy for Dmitry? The narrator characterizes him in such a negative way. So how can a narrator, give us all these descriptions of how terrible of a person he is, and right in the very beginning, we are told these terrible things about him. How is it possible for him to tell us these things and then we still end up feeling sympathy for him? Because I assume from our little survey that you felt some type of way about Dmitry. You felt a little bit of sympathy. So, how is it possible, And I want you to blame it on the narrator, of course. Chekhov's narrator is directly responsible for your conflicted emotions. So let's keep going. So you're probably wondering, how? How did the narrator manage to do it? How can he show us this terrible man in the beginning, and then somehow by the end of the story, we're feeling sorry for him. We're wanting something more for him. We're wanting him to be happy and satisfied with his life. And the answer to that is pathos. Chekhov's narrator uses pathos to make us feel sorry for Dmitry. He subtly makes us care about this inappropriate relationship, which makes us look at Dmitry in a not so negative way. And just in case you're unfamiliar with pathos, I have included the definitions there. And pathos is a quality that evokes pity or sadness, a technique used in writing to arouse feelings of pity, sorrow, or sympathy. Should have added some commas in there. Whatever. Alright. So let's look at when and where does the narrator use pathos. Now, let's just go to the next one. So there's a more obvious use of pathos used in the entire 3rd section of the story. That is his most blatant use of pathos. That is the section where we really feel differently about Dmitry. We feel bad for him. We feel sad for him. We want him to, have something better. However, the less obvious use of pathos is spread throughout the entire story. All you have to do is look closely to the narrator's description of Dmitry's thoughts and actions. Okay. So I will point out various sections or quotes to help you see what I saw like the second time I read this story. And I want to place emphasis on the fact that I had to read the story twice to pinpoint exactly when I started to feel differently about Dmitry, because initially in the beginning I did not like this man. I hated him. So, I paid close attention the second time because in the end I did feel bad for him, and I wanted to know how could I feel bad for him. So I had to look closely. So let's look at the subtle use of pathos, which is in part 2 of the story. If we go to page 173, the text reads, "Hush, hush," he muttered. He looked at her fixed, scared eyes, kissed her, talked softly and affectionately, and by degrees she was comforted, and her gaiety returned. They both began laughing. So the words softly and affectionately stand out the most there. These are such delicate words that makes me think of this terrible man as a better person, a kind person, because he was so distant, initially when okay, yeah, I wanted to make sure I was at the right part. So because he was so distant, remember at first when she was like, "Oh, you'll be the first to despise me now," and he's just like, "I'm finna eat this watermelon. Fuck what you talking about. Oh, excuse me. Don't, I didn't mean to say that." So, alright, so he's just like, "Yeah, I'm not trying to listen to what you talking about." So we're thinking of him as very distant or aloof or uncaring, unaffected. But at this point in the story, he is trying to console her. He's trying to comfort her. And that made me think of him in a different way. I like the fact that he was able to comfort her. So that kind of, made him seem like, okay, he tried. He's not that bad. Another important part can be seen at the bottom of page 173. Again, my page numbers won't correlate to any page numbers you have unless you got your story from the anthology that I printed my story out from. So don't listen to page numbers. You'll just have to either recall where these sections are or get it from the exact anthology I got mine from. And I'll probably put that in the description. Okay, so at the bottom of page 173, it talks about how he kissed her passionately and made a new man of him. He was impatiently passionate with her. This language slowly and unconsciously changed my perception of Dmitry. I almost forgot completely that their interactions with one another was wrong. By this point in the story, they've been hanging out. They've been, having just a cute little relationship. So at this point, I forgot completely that they weren't supposed to be doing this, that they both had significant others already. It wasn't until her husband called for her to come home that I realized, like, oh, right, duh, they are fucking married. But yeah, so those are two examples, on page 172 and 173, where you can see, the subtle use of pathos, the narrator slowly shaping our perception of Dmitry. We're thinking of him, we're thinking like maybe he does have some redeeming qualities, Alright, and then part 3 of the story, part 3 of the story, the most obvious use of pathos. In this section, we learn that Dmitry is in love. He is love sick and desperate to be with Anna again. He couldn't stop reminiscing about her. He was tormented by an intense... These are quotes, by the way. I have it up here. Yeah, there are.
No, but nobody hit your line.
My roommate busting in my room for no reason. Alright. Yeah, so, look, throwing me off track. Okay, so in this little bubble here, I have some quotes up there from section 3 so that you can see. It says he was tormented by an intense desire to confide his memories to someone. Again, really strong language there. The narrator is making us understand his pain. Robin! I'm sorry, you guys. Should have locked my... Maybe I should lock my door, actually. You think if you have one roommate, you wouldn't have an issue. And I told her that I was about to do this. She knows that I'm doing this. Okay, so... Yeah, so this is really strong language here. Now I'm getting off topic. I'm sorry. Really strong language here. The narrator is making us understand his pain at this section. One part that really made me feel sorry for him was when he was talking to one of his co-workers, and he was like, if only you knew what a fascinating woman I made the acquaintance of in Yalta. At this point, I knew he was in love, and I wanted him to go find her and marry her, and I knew that they were like, he was truly in love with her. He couldn't control, at this moment it showed that he couldn't even control himself from speaking about her, you know. So, this is essentially when Dmitry becomes pathetic, you know. Pathos, pathetic, you know, he becomes a pathetic character. This is where the narrator makes us feel sorry for him. By the end of part 3, I thought to myself, wow, he is really pathetic. He's pitiful, you know, like, I couldn't believe it. And I immediately thought to earlier in the story when he called Anna pathetic, you know, if I can go to that. He said something like along the lines of, there's something like afterwards, yeah, when he was in his room and he's thinking about Anna and he's thinking about how she is so young and reminds him of his daughter, he says there's something pathetic about her anyway. So that kind of, that stood out to me the second time I read it, like, he's pathetic, and he noticed this patheticness, I guess if patheticness is a word, he noticed that in Anna very early. So yeah. And then everything makes sense. Dmitry is just as pathetic as Anna. She was different. I came to the conclusion that that's why he fell in love with Anna. You know, she was different from every other woman, and she was just like him, you know, pathetic. They both were stuck in these loveless marriages, you know, and lots of different passages then had more meaning to me. One particular passage that had more meaning to me was when Anna was going on her rant about how unhappy she was in her life. So, the moment before he consoled her, the moment before he was consoling her and, you know, he talked softly and affectionate towards her, she was saying to him, no, I am bad. I'm a bad, low woman. I despise myself and don't attempt to justify myself. It's not my husband, but myself I have deceived. And not only just now. I have been deceiving myself for a long time. My husband may be a good, honest man, but he is a flunky. I don't know what he does there, what his work is, but I know he is a flunky. I was 22 when I married him. I have been tormented by curiosity. I wanted something better. There must be a different sort of life, I said to myself. I wanted to live. I was fired by curiosity. You don't understand it, but I swear to God, I could not control myself. Something happened to me. I could not be restrained. I told my husband I was ill and I came here. And Here I've been walking about as though I were dazed like a mad creature, and now I have become a vulgar, contemptible woman whom anyone may despise. So, initially, so the narrator, after Anna has went on that long rant, and she's like, pouring out her feelings, her emotions to Dmitry. She's trying to tell him, like, I feel like a bad person, but I can't help it because I'm just not satisfied with my life. I'm not happy with my husband. He's not for me. She's telling all of this to Dmitry. And then the next line says, he felt bored already listening to her. He was irritated by the naive tone, by this remorse, so unexpected and inopportune. But for the tears in her eyes, he might have thought she was jesting or playing a part. So, after, reading the story, getting all the way through the story, that section had more meaning to me. At first, when I saw that he said he was bored already and he was irritated with her for doing it, I'm like, wow, what an asshole. But after doing some close reading, I came to the conclusion that he felt bored because she was saying out loud what he had been saying to himself, So if we go back to earlier in the story when it said, it seemed to him that he had been so schooled by bitter experience that he might call them what he liked, and yet he could not get on. Oh, no, that's actually wrong. Not the section I meant to read. Down under that, the next paragraph. Experience often repeated, truly bitter experience, had taught him long ago that with decent people, especially Moscow people, always slow to move and irresolute, even intimacy, which at first so agreeably diversifies life and appears a light and charming adventure, inevitably grows into a regular problem of extreme intricacy, and in the long run the situation becomes unbearable. But at every fresh meeting with an interesting woman, this experience seemed to slip out of his memory, and he was eager for life, and everything seemed simple and amusing. So that made more sense to me. Right there, he's saying like he's so used to the same old thing. And there's even another section, I won't read it, but there's even another section in the story where he's so used to the same type of women. He's so used to this mundane life and these unsatisfactory relationships that he gets involved in. So, Anna was something different for him. And that's why in the end they were just so, God, we got to figure out how we're going to be together. We got to make this work, So, yeah. So now, with all that being said, my final thoughts are the following. It was the author's intention to make you feel sympathetic towards Dmitry's situation. Chekhov purposely created a flawed, complex character. He ensured that readers would feel sympathy for this flawed character by making him a relatable human being. The reason why readers have conflicted feelings about Dmitry is because he is so complex. And this situation is so relatable. Naturally, humans crave companionship. We want to love and be loved. Yes, he was wrong for cheating, but is he wrong for wanting to be happy? That's a question that us as readers have to ask ourselves. Is he wrong for wanting to be happy? Is he wrong for seeking something better for himself? Is he wrong for falling in love? I think the answer is no. And I think that's what makes this story so great, was that Chekhov managed to create this flawed character who is undoubtedly worthy of sympathy, if nothing less, and makes us, Chekhov made us question, like, should we fault someone for feeling the way they feel, So, yeah, that's basically it. This is, like, kind of I guess maybe an outline of what I talked about in my paper. Yeah, this is kind of my presentation here is kind of like an outline of what I said in my paper. Everything I went into more detail with in my paper, pulled out more quotes and things like that I especially wanted to pay attention to. I hope this one is better. I'm not sure if this one is even shorter. I'll have to check. I hope it's shorter. That was my goal, but hopefully it's more cohesive. I'll get better with these as time goes on. Just want to help out, and yeah. So, bye. Ask any questions you would like to know. I can definitely help you out with those. I get on YouTube periodically, and I'll be getting on there more now that I'm making these videos. So, yeah. All right.